Hello, friends. I did not do a good job of adjusting my camera. Oh my goodness. Hang on. Hey, Peter. Hey, Snoz. How are you? I still didn't adjust my camera well. Excellent. Excellent job, me. How are you guys? Roaming Witch, hello! How are you? What is up? What is up? I've got a fresh, brand new, I haven't even properly centered it yet, note document for today's story. Good, thanks. And you? Doing pretty good. It's Friday, which is nice. I'm wiped. I've fought a long and terrible battle. I'm tired. Oh no, Roaming Witch, what happened? What were you fighting with? We love to see this. I'm glad. It's nice to have a writing stream. I feel like the editing streams are different. And I kind of miss having the clicky clack sound effect during the sprinting, which my sprint timer has gone off on its own. So yeah, I'm excited about the story that I'm gonna write today. I have a plan for it, so that's nice. First thing I'm gonna do, as per the discussion on Ghost Stream last night, is I'm gonna save this so that when I put words in it, they don't get lost. So this is story 6. Hard to believe it. We've done 5 of these already. Super sleepy, didn't sleep well last night, had a nap, and I've ordered food. Well, I hope the nap and food help perk you up a bit. Hopefully the fact that it's Friday as well. Hopefully you get some rest and relaxation over the weekend. Also, Snoz, what have you been up to lately? It's been so long, I feel like, since I got to talk to you. I ripped off a guitar's neck. It did not want to come off, but in the end, I won with fire and brute strength. I wondered if maybe it was a guitar thing. I'm glad you won. I'm sorry the guitar was so stubborn. But that seems to be the way of things. Haven't slept since Thursday morning. Snoz, what have you been up to that you've been up for so long? I hope you haven't been listening to Jump Around nonstop for all that time. It's Friday, Wednesday, my foods. Woof, hello! I was worried because none of my messages were going through to you. And I wasn't even sure if you would see that I was going live. How are you, Woof? How's your Friday? I wasn't, but I am now. You gotta listen to like 10 hours of that nonstop to get some idea what it was like for Ghost during his 24-hour stream. I have no idea how my husband survived being, like, not just under the bright lights of his studio, which blind me in, like, 30 seconds, but listening to nonstop blurps and, like, the text-to-speech. Everyone doing that, and they don't stop coming, and they don't stop coming. To the point where the text-to-speech bot sounded like it was just done with the universe. Oh my goodness. I was AFK, so that's why. I mean, it's fine. It's not a big deal. I was just like, oh no, what if I can't get in touch with Woof? I know, because you asked last night about the stream, so I was like, oh no, what if I can't tell him that I'm going live? Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. I don't know how Ghost did it either. It was very intense. I was kind of glad at the end of the stream that I was listening to the Discord and not to the stream, because Ghost said that he had dreams of that song. The night after he finally went to bed, he was like, and then I had dreams with the song in it, and I was like, Woof, are you done with work for the day? Is your Friday over? Do you still have a few hours left to go? I have one more thing. Well, that's not true. I actually have a bunch more things to do off camera today, but I have one more big writing thing to do, and that's write this story that we're gonna write right now. Sad ghost pepper noises. Yes, Friday is over. Nice. So for those that haven't heard this spiel before, I'm doing this project for 2022 called 22 Stories in 2022. The number comes from the number of stories that I post on my blog every year. So if we hop over to my website, megancutler.net, where you can find information on all of my projects, you'll see that every other week I post these nice free short stories. The current one is Mirror Mirror on the Wall, which was actually written on stream back in November. I think it was the third, I guess maybe this one was in December. It was like the third story that I wrote on stream before this project started, obviously. This is part of my Darkling Fairy Tale series, a sequel to the original Mirror Mirror on the Wall. My Darkling Fairy Tale stories feature objects from fairy tale stories, such as the mirror, the magic mirror from Snow White, the one in which you say "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all." There's a whole bunch of them now. There's the Spindle of the Spinning Wheel from Sleeping Beauty. Cinderella's Slipper is one of them, which is actually one of my favorite ones because it actually goes somewhere really dark and interesting. Rapunzel's Severed Hair is one of the newer ones. There's the Pea from The Princess and the Pea. Ursula's Shell from The Little Mermaid / Hans Zimmerman's... is it Hans Zimmerman? No, Hans Christian Andersen, I think it is. Zimmerman is the composer, lol. Original Little Mermaid, it's kind of a homage to both. So stuff like that. There's a bunch of different ones. The P, P-E-A, from The Princess and the Pea. So there's a whole bunch of those. This is a sequel to the first one. There's probably another part in this coming eventually, although possibly not this year, while we're working on 22 stories in 2022. So I post these every other week. Every other week I post a blog, which is like a musing about various different things. You can see the notes for my Make Your One True Pairing stream are up there right now. I also have just little writing posts or things about my projects and how they're going, stuff like that. But of these freebies, there are usually about 22 every year. It's about how many I write. So I decided to do a 22 stories in 2022 project. And the idea is that I've taken the prompts from the 31 stories in 31 days from back in January. So I haven't really chosen the prompts. I've just sort of gathered them up, hoovered them up to use. And I'm trying to, one, make every single one of them fit into the multiverse where my stories take place, which has been relatively easy so far. And two, I'm trying to avoid writing from the perspective of or featuring too heavily main characters within the story. Main characters can appear in the background, but any of the characters that appear on my blog quite often, such as Dahmer and Rose, those people, I'm trying to keep them more so in the background. We have seen Dahmer at least once in the background. We're probably going to see him again today, because the character that I'm writing from the perspective of today is Robin, Dahmer's daughter, who we've written about on stream before, but I'm really excited because I actually have a plan for today's story, and I'm really excited to see how it comes out. I wrote a brilliant story about my cat in my writing class on Wednesday. Nice, Peter. That's awesome. Princesses pee as well, but they do it more royally and elegantly than the rest of us. I don't know if that's true. I think they probably pee about the same way as the rest of us. You just don't, like, hear about it as much. She really means the pee, though? Oh my gosh, you guys. Oh, that's a different story, I feel. Different connotations with that kind of pee. So the full prompt for today, this is the part where I ramble about what I'm going to write for like 20 minutes before I write. The full prompt today is incomparable fear envelopes a character like a tsunami. Which is a really... So, sidebar. I don't like prompts like this because it's really generic. This is the sort of thing that could happen at any point in a larger story. And it doesn't really, to me, it doesn't really spark, I don't know what the right word is. It doesn't really spark a lot of my interest as a writer necessarily, because it's a sort of thing that I'm used to writing often. It doesn't feel really provocative to me, which isn't to say that it's a bad prompt, because some people really love prompts like this that are very open, and I mean all prompts should be open, but it really just comes down to like what sort of sparks your interest as a writer. And actually I stopped doing writing prompts for a long time because I don't like these kinds of prompts. For me, I tend to want something, I don't want to say more unique, but something that's like specifically evocative to me, something that takes me down a different type of journey. Like the prompt about a cat warns you that a volcano is going to erupt, like it feels a bit more confining in some ways, but it's a very different type of prompt. It makes you think about the scenario in a different type of way. So these types of prompts are prompts that I don't usually do very often, especially because it's really easy to lean on like characters that I write a lot about, and then like and then I just feel like I'm talking about the same character or a different character's fears over and over. AB Coffee, hello, thank you so much for the lurk. Pie as well, thank you for the lurk. Having a karaoke party with my family. You gotta tell us what you're gonna sing, Pie, or what you already have sung, and then enjoy yourself. A different type of journey. If I find out you stopped believing, I'm gonna be very disappointed. No, never stop believing. Always believing. I once wrote about an old watchmaker making toys for a ghost of a little girl. That sounds amazing, Roaming Witch. I love that idea. To me, I just find that with a prompt like this, where it's like fear envelops a character, I find it really easy to lean on the characters that I know very well, because I know their fears and I sort of know what makes them tick. And of course I could pick any character and ask myself, what is their fear? What would make them freeze? So they're not a type of prompt that I use very often, but I did commit to just this list of prompts and embracing like all the ins and outs of them, whether or not they were the sort of thing that I would normally do. So of course I did kind of land on a character that I'm somewhat more familiar with, Robin. Laurel Tabby, thank you so much for the sub! How are you? Welcome to the stream. Feel free to steal it. I'm not going to steal your idea, Roaming Witch, but I do love it. I would love to read it. So please write more of it, is what I'm saying. Hello, Laurel Tabby. What are you up to today? So Robin is a character that has come up on stream before. Actually, I think the first story, like my test stream that I did to see if anyone was even interested in watching me write, was partially written from Robin's perspective. Robin is Damarin's daughter in some of the multiverse worlds that he appears in, because Damarin is kind of all over the place in the multiverse. This particular version of the two of them, it's a sort of space setting. I'm not going to say hard sci-fi, because I don't do hard science very well ever, even when I want to, but it's a more sci-fi oriented setting. Damarin is a mercenary, the head of a mercenary company, actually, and he lives primarily in space. He has this very nomadic lifestyle. And his daughter was accidental. I was going to say sort of accidental, but there's no sort of about it. He and a woman that he met at a bar had a wild drunk night and ended up sleeping together, which is somewhat ironic because Damarin actually isn't really interested in women. But if you get him drunk enough, you know, like, I'm not going to remember much of this in the morning drunk. Things happen. And that's how Robin was conceived. Damarin did not know about her when she was born because her mother didn't contact him. She made no attempt to interrupt his life as she sort of saw it. She was just like, you know, he has his thing, I have my thing, and my thing is my daughter. But Robin's mother eventually became sick. We haven't really established what she had, but I assume it was some form of cancer. And as she realized that her end was coming, she made a concerted effort to contact Dameron and let him know, hey, by the way, you have a child, and I'm not going to be around to raise her for very much longer. Robin was about 10, 11 when this happened. And so a story as old as time, two people getting drunk in a bar and having a night. It is a tale as old as time. And so in this particular universe, Dameron is kind of hard to contact just because he's a busy man. He's the head of a company. There's a war going on. There are a couple levels of contact that you have to go through to kind of get to him, unless he has sort of made a prearrangement. And since he didn't know he had a daughter, there was no prearrangement there. And so by the time Dameron found out about Robin, her mother had sadly passed away. She has, which is sort of where we're starting today. Robin's mother has passed away. She's still sort of dealing with the grief. She's trying to find her place and who she is at her aunt's ranch, where I believe she's grown up at this place. Her and her mother used to live here, but now her mother's gone. Her aunt is raising her. She feels a bit adrift because the most anchoring point in her life, her mother, is missing. And this is when she finally meets her father and finds out about her father, and finds out that he's a space mercenary, but that also he's willing to take her with him and have her live with him and try his best to raise her if she wants to leave the farm, the ranch, where they've been raising horses and cattle, and venture out into space where they cannot take horses with them because they won't do well on the spaceship, and sort of discover this person who her father is. And so the fear, the specific fear that I want to capture in this moment is that Robin has already said yes to wanting to go with her father into space, but now she's sort of standing at the base ramp of the spaceship and sort of realizing that she's giving up everything that she knows, that this life that she's about to embark on is completely different than anything she's ever experienced. She's not prepared for it. She's 11. So there is the fearlessness of being young, but also the terror of, I don't know anything beyond this small backwater world where I've grown up. And so this sort of paralyzing moment of, do I follow through and go and do what I said I was going to do and discover this man who my father is, or do I change my mind and retreat back to the comfort of what I know and stay here? And so that's sort of, this is one of those like moments frozen in time. I kind of did something similar when I did The Moments of Perfection Are Rare, and we were sort of zoomed in on an artist who was trying to capture a specific moment in time for later memory. This is sort of, I think everyone has had that experience where you're trying to make a big decision and you go back and forth on it, right? For me, my most recent, and my most vivid experience of something like that was when we bought this house. Because buying a house is always a big thing, and you're like, is it a good idea to buy this house? Is this house the right fit for me? Am I paying too much? Can I actually afford this? And of course, you have, if anyone's gone through the house buying process, you put in an offer on a house and you usually make it conditional on things like financing or home inspection. Well, it's almost always subject to financing, but you also add conditions such as like home inspection, right? Because then you can get out of the deal if there's something, if you discover like our friend Squiggy, unfortunately, yesterday had to pull out of a house offer because the home inspection came back bad, right? It's basically an ejector button. But there comes a point in time during that process. Hey, Atanchi! How are you? There comes a point in time during that process where you have to sign off on your conditions, and after that, there's no more eject button. You're locked in, you're buying that house, you're signing the paperwork. It's a done deal, right? And so that, to me, is the most stressful moment because it becomes like a final decision. It's no longer uncertain. And so that's kind of the moment that I want to capture today in writing. The challenge for me, I'm doing a lot of moment captures lately, but the challenge for me is to capture that moment of indecision of, do I go or do I stay? Which is more terrifying to me in this moment. So I expect a lot of this to be internal, but I'll hopefully play with descriptions, how the world looks to you in a moment of sheer terror versus how it looks when it's comfortable, playing with those kinds of emotions. And I'm actually really excited about this, even though it's not the kind of prompt that I usually write, just because I'm really interested in actually taking a look at this character. I don't usually get really super emotional with this particular character. She's usually more of a side character. And so making her the main focus of the emotion is very appealing to me. If I had a penny for every time I'd gotten drunk and had a night, I'd have like 0 pennies because I'm not really that kind of person. I'm not really that kind of person either, but Damarin is, especially in this universe. You can't do much with 2 pennies anymore. That is true. We don't even have pennies anymore in Canada. They got rid of them. Doing chores? Well, good luck with your chores, Atanchi. I hope you're almost finished so that you can relax and enjoy the weekend. My character, Scarlet, was 11 when she was first asked by a very powerful being to assist them in helping souls pass on, so she could probably relate to Robin somewhat. Absolutely. Same age, being asked to change your whole life. And I have this impression, because I've read a lot about Coraline. If any of you have actually read the book Coraline by Neil Gaiman, it's an amazing book. For an adult, it's terrifying. It's basically a horror novel. But what's interesting is if you read what Neil Gaiman has said about it, he said that when children read it, when younger people read it, 8, 9, 10, 11-year-olds read this book, it's just an adventure, right? They just love it. It's not scary to them. It's adults that it's scary for. And so that's kind of like what I want to do with this character is like, yeah, she's scared, but like the world is completely different. Like what's scary to an 11-year-old is completely different than what's scary to me. And that's sort of one of the reasons why I wanted to do this, right? Because writing from a younger perspective adds that extra challenge. If she goes, there will be trouble. If she stays, there will be double. Absolutely. Absolutely correct, Snaz. I thought it was kind of creepy adventure story when I read it in middle school. Yeah, I read it as an adult. I was in my 30s, I think. Late 20s, early 30s when I finally read Coraline. I read it at night, alone in a house while my husband was out of town, and that probably didn't help with how terrifying it was. It's pretty creepy. I've seen the movie, haven't read the book. I haven't seen the movie. I really should. It's very good. I think that the movie is pretty close to the book from what I've read. It's not a very... I think I actually... Oh, you know what? I was going to say I think I have it on the bookshelf next to me, but it's actually in the other room. My Neil Gaiman books are out in the dining room. It's only about this thick. It's really short. Should reread the book. I haven't read it since then. Yeah, you should reread it and see if it's more terrifying to you now that you're grown up and see everything from a completely... Because there's some scary stuff in there. I mean, she goes... For anyone who's not read Coraline, it's about a little girl who finds a door in... I don't know if it's the attic, but, like, finds a door in her house that leads to, like, a twisted version of her house and her family. And there's, like, a spider mother? I don't even really remember the whole thing. But, like, the mother is, like, trying to get Coraline to give up her home and her world and, like, come live with her. It's really creepy. The other mother who has button eyes, yes. And she's terrifying. She scared the pants off of me. As a full-grown adult. So, ironically, I figured out where I want to end this story today, but I have to decide where I want to begin so that we can do our first writing sprint. I do my little claw hands when I'm thinking. My little crabby claws. I gotta get out of Coraline mode and into Robin mode. I'm listening to the Space Stream music today on the Owned because for the first time I'm actually doing, like, space sci-fi writing since I started using this. Okay, I think what I'm gonna do, I have a picture, I have a photograph in my brain. I'm just gonna hit the sprint timer and start typing words, because that is sometimes the best way to go. For anyone who is new to my streams, during the sprint timer when I'm writing, I tend not to read chat very much. So it'll be about 20 minutes of the clicky clack of my keyboard, but please feel free to talk in chat. I always catch up in between. This is just, the timer is just sort of my way of forcing myself to focus. And even though my husband says these are procrastination streams, I do try to actually do productivity in them from time to time. Fridays are the easiest. Friday afternoon, which it is right now where I live, it's 3 o'clock right now, is like prime distraction time. So if I'm like ultra distracted today, we know why. But I feel pretty confident with this idea, so hopefully once I get going. And I showed a picture of this on the Discord, but I have cleaned my keyboard so that it is pristine. I took every key off of my keyboard over spring break, and I cleaned out all the underbits and wiped down all the keys and put them back, because my keyboard hadn't been cleaned in, like, I want to say 3 years. It may have been 4. So it's clean. It should be, that clicky clack should be ultra crisp. There's nothing interfering with my switches. So let's do it. Ooh, I feel like this is good writing music. It's got that beat. I need to learn how to clean my keyboard properly. I just take a feather duster. Very gently take a small, thin screwdriver head, slip it under the keys, and pop them off one by one to expose the underneath. And then you can use the same screwdriver to very gently scrape out anything that's fallen into the keyboard bed, plus a tissue and a very, very lightly damp paper towel to just get everything nice and clean. You want to make sure there's nothing sticking to your switches, and you don't want to get it really wet. Just do that very gently. You can also turn it upside down and shake it outside to try and get any dust particles or crumbs that have fallen in there out. And then when you're done, just wipe off your keyboards again with a very lightly damp paper towel and stick the keys all back on. And that's all there is to it. It sounds scary, but the keys on your keyboard are actually designed to pop on and off. So as long as you're gentle with them, and don't put too much pressure on any one end, you'll be fine. Especially if you have a mechanical keyboard. The only one you may have to be careful with is your spacebar. If it's an older keyboard, it might actually have a bar underneath, and then you just have to sort of roll it up very gently and pull it off of the bar. There's pictures in the Discord if anyone wants to see what mine looked like when it was naked and dirty. Trying to type too fast, actually, and my fingers are like combining words. Driving home, be back soon to do some typies with everyone. Drive safe, Roaming Witch. Thank you for the lurk. Popping in for a comment that you can ignore because it's silly. Last 3 paragraphs start with an O. Yeah, I don't pay as much attention to that kind of stuff with writing prompts as I would if this was a manuscript, but I do notice. Luckily, it's not all the same word. Lots of description in this first bit. Some internal thought. If this wasn't manuscript, if this was like a scene for a book, I would probably try to balance a little bit better between the internal and the external, but it's just for fun. I think it's going pretty well. 945 words for our first sprint is pretty good, even though we do have 3 paragraphs starting with O in a row. I made a rhyme. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with the start of this. Just sort of so far I've written about the familiar things in Robin's life, and now we're sort of starting to get into the upheaval and the change that's coming. So yeah. At some point I want to make hot tea, but I still have a little bit of cold tea, so I might do another sprint first and then make tea. And I want to show you guys because I actually have I don't know if it's an oolong tea, but it looks like an oolong tea. So I have this new sample that I started yesterday that I did the first steep of. And it's an oolong, I think. So the tea leaves are I can actually just show you guys, but the tea leaves are really like rolled together. And they've started to spread because I did one steep. And so if I steep them again later, I can show you guys like the difference in how much they open. So hang on, I'm not gonna go into BRB mode, but have an angry Dahmerin for a second while I go grab something. Tea sounds good. I think I'll make a cup. I always recommend tea. Okay, so I'll show you guys what I mean, because I've talked about this on stream before, but I've never really gotten to show you guys. So I have this new tea that I started yesterday. And if I hopefully pop it open without making a huge mess all over my desk. Let me try and get some of the actual leaf. So if you see here in my hand, you can see how like the leaf is like really small, and I'm not doing a very good job of showing it. The leaf is really small, and it's like sort of bundled up. You can sort of see like it's rolled, and it's just really small. And so the whole tea portion, yeah, making a little bit of a mess, but if you see, like, the whole portion of tea looks like that. It's just, it almost looks like these little pellets. And now I'll show you what happens. All my tea leaves back into the tea container. And then, so this is what it looks like after I've steeped it once. And you can see that the leaves have started to open up and unwind. So they look much, much bigger already. And they're taking up much more space in the steeper than you would expect. Like, because that's only about, like about that much tea. So about, like, this much tea. Originally in the bottom of the steeper. And because I've steeped it once, when it imparted its flavor, it started to open. So I don't know if I can grab one of these leaves. but you can kind of see how it started to open and started to unfold. And a lot of them look like that. So you can see how they've started to unwind. If I steep this again, these leaves will open up even more. They'll be about this much. It'll look like about that much tea in the bottom of the steeper. And it will have fully given all of its flavor. So that's when I talk about how like oolongs open and how you can tell what they look like based on like how much flavor they have left to give based on how much they've opened. That's what I mean. And it's kind of cool. It's kind of cool to see. Not all teas do this, but any teas that start as like really rolled up, almost little balls, they do this, and it's kind of super cool. Always loved iced tea, and I've been getting more and more into cold brewing my own tea at home lately. Absolutely. I use this. I do. So this is a single cup steeper. Mine is from Tivana. You can also get these from pretty much any tea store. It's not Tivana. It's Adiago tea. I misspoke. It's the Ingenuity steeper from Adiago tea. And basically you put the tea into the bottom, and then you fill it up however much. I fill mine right up to the top because that's how much my teacup holds. And then at the bottom, I'm not going to press it just in case there's any moisture in there right now. But once it's steeped, you basically put this on top of your teacup, and it drips down. It drips down into the cup, and it leaves the leaves behind. And so I can actually just keep these in here. I keep them. This is from yesterday. I keep them overnight, and then I steep them again. But if I want iced tea, I will fill this up, leave the lid open until it cools down a little bit, and I just stick this in the fridge overnight for like 24 hours. And it's really good for single cup cold brew. And I also have a big pitcher. It's about this big. From David's Tea, which is like a tea press iced tea pitcher. So I can put the tea in the bottom, steep it, and then it has a like second part that goes down, and it presses the tea to the bottom of the pitcher, and then you just fill it up with water or ice. It tells you to do it with ice, but I usually just do it with water because I stick it in the fridge for like a week. So yeah, 2 ways to cold brew. This one is obviously single serving, and then the pitcher holds about like 7 or 8 cups of tea. And I do twice as much into the big pitcher because I'm going to do twice as much tea, and I'm going to double steep it. So I'm going to steep it for much longer. And with this, I usually do my cold brews with a second steep or with a fruity tea. This one, I don't know what this one would taste like. This is a maple tea, so I don't know what it would taste like cold. But if I was going to cold brew it, I would do it after the first steep, and I would do it on the second steep. Hey, Kiki! So I thought that would be cool. I thought that would be kind of cool. Tiny little piece of science to show you guys. Because I've talked about it before on stream, so we can revisit that later. Once I have a chance to brew it. For now, let me run it back out to the kitchen because I don't want to knock it over on my desk. One sec. Snaz. Using that Domrin emote. Domrin's mad because we're not writing. Yeah, so Anyway, that's what it looks like when an oolong starts to open. I'll do one more sprint, and then we'll have a bit of a longer break. I'll make some tea, and I can show you what it looks like when it's fully open. What kind of tea are you drinking, Snoz? Dish the tea. Let us know. Tell us. Lemon ginger. Nice. Good choice. For anyone wondering, lemon and ginger is a good combo because ginger has a lot of power to it. Like, ginger can be a really overwhelming, really strong flavor. And so can lemon. So they balance each other. They have the same kind of zing. I have a tea, or I had a tea. I think I've used it all now. It was called Peach Zing. And it was peach and ginger, but peach is a really delicate flavor that's really easy to drown. And so this peach ginger tea just tasted like ginger. It had no peach flavor at all because the ginger just totally overwhelmed the peach. Obviously, I did not buy more of that tea. I got it as a sample in one of my tea subscription boxes from David's Tea. It basically should have been called Zing because it had no peach. It was all Zing, no peach. I had to actually put a different peach flavored tea into the final pitcher of tea I had from that tea in order to make it taste like peach. So I didn't buy more of that one. You could have added some fresh lemon juice. I did. So after I brew, I mean, it wasn't fresh lemon juice. It was like pre-squeezed. But whenever I do a pitcher, like a big pitcher of tea, I usually put a sprinkle of lemon juice. There's a tiny sprinkle of lemon juice in this. This is the Nordic berry tea from David's Tea. So I usually put a tiny sprinkle of lemon juice into my cold teas to sweeten them up and brighten the flavors a little bit, especially if they're fruity. But even with the lemon juice, it just tasted like lemon and ginger, which is fine. Lemon and ginger is fine, but when it's called Peach Zing, you kind of want it to taste like peaches, right? But there was no getting peach out of that tea. All right. Second sprint as promised, and then we'll make some tea. Let me just regain my bearings here. Good to combine it with a better peach tea, though. Yeah, I felt like by combining it with another peach tea, I did actually get the flavor that they were trying to give me, which was Peach Zing. But I didn't buy it because it would only be used as an additive. Like, I don't know if they still sell it, but David's Tea used to have a tea called The Spice is Right, which was all just spices. And it wasn't bad, but on its own, it felt like a really weak tea to me. Because my husband was like, oh, one of my coworkers has that tea. We should get some. And I was like, I have some, but I don't want to get more because, like, it's really thin on its own. But if you add it to another tea, if you add it, like, on top of a fruity tea to make it a fruity spice tea, it works really well. And so sometimes it's okay to have teas that are like, I throw this in to add ginger to another tea, or I throw this in to add spices to another tea. But I find myself hesitant to buy them because I don't always want to have to brew two types of tea in order to have a cup of tea. I want to be able to just buy one tea and have that tea. So, but if you're into, like, tea blending, it is a thing you can do. I'm going to skip this song because it has talking in it. And I don't like that. Alright. Got some strawberry lemon orange blossom tea. Now I'm honestly thinking of brewing some. That sounds delicious. Strawberry lemon orange blossom. Especially if it's cold. That sounds like a perfect, like, early summer weather tea. Perfect for a bright sunny day. Which it is actually here today. We've had some rain and wind, but it's actually quite gorgeous. Okay. I promised to sprint, so I'm gonna be good. I'm gonna do it. Got a little bit of hibiscus. Oh, I love hibiscus. Like hibiscus and strawberry. So good, yo. I know if Woof is listening, Woof isn't a fan of hibiscus, but hibiscus in like a fruity iced tea, chef's kiss. I love it. I actually just ordered a tea called Hibiscus Splash, which hasn't arrived yet, but I have had before, and I'm really excited about having more of it because I want to make a big pitcher for summer. We're gonna have to skip the EDM because let's skip down to here. Lots of flavors to mesh together. Yes, I like those. I like teas for summer that taste like a fruit punch sort of thing. do like the beat in this music. When you're trying to say bag without saying bag 5 times. Why do they put stuff that sounds like talking in these? That's wind blowing outside. I was like, I thought I heard something bang. It did. It was branches against my window. It's very sunny, but apparently still windy. Sans Creativity, thank you for the lurk. What am I trying to type? There we go. When you're just having a brain fart and you look at a word and you just can't tell what's wrong with it. Have to run Thor outside. Thanks for the lurk, Snaz. Have a good walk. My brain farts out all the time with words I haven't written in a while, especially longer words. Yeah, I find too, like when you're writing, you get into a flow, and then if something breaks that flow, you just kind of like, it's like when something slips out of your fingers, right? Suddenly you're like, oh no, what are words? And so, like, even sometimes when I know how to spell, like, know with absolute certainty that I know how to spell something, I just can't make my fingers do it. And this was a case of, like, I couldn't get word to figure out what I meant either. So it was just like, no. But I Googled nutritional yeast, which is, like, not exactly what I was thinking of, but very similar to what I was thinking of, and it instantly came up, and I was like, okay, I'm not just imagining that this was ever a word. I've even misspelled my own name more than once. Yeah, I make up names and then forget how to spell them all the time. So, Typees time! Oh, I didn't even realize it was break time, Roaming Witch. I thought the Thingu was still running. No worries. I did promise I would make some tea, so I'm probably gonna do that. But if you want to get started on a sprint, you don't have to wait for me. Absolutely. How much did I write during that sprint? It was here. 938 on that sprint. Pretty good. So we're at 1,883 total. Definitely need at least one more sprint. Possibly two. It depends on how deep this particular rabbit hole is going to be. We've definitely reached that uncertainty moment our character has locked up here. She doesn't know what she wants. Perfect time for tea. We should always leave our characters in peril to make tea, right? I am going to have a quick bio break, put the kettle on. I'll probably come back and chat while it steeps because it'll need a few extra minutes. And then once we have tea, we'll get another sprint going. So I'll see you in a moment. I'm back. The tea is steeping. When you meant to leave your tea in the water for 10 minutes but accidentally left it for 15. Oh no! What type of tea? Is it that strawberry tea? Because it might be okay. But I know some teas get like super bitter. Although I guess if it's fruity tea, it might get super tangy if you leave it in extra. I've done that a few times where like I've walked into the kitchen after like half an hour and been like, and just find my teacup sitting there with a tea bag in it, and I'm like, oh, I made tea. Oops. Hopefully you can save it with a little bit of like sweetener or like a little something to balance it out. But oversteeping tea can be a thing. I'm gonna let my current tea steep a little longer than usual, at least 5 minutes, more than I would normally let a green tea steep. But it's a second steep, so it's gonna need a little bit of extra time. I could already see that the leaves were unwinding before I came back, so that's super cool. It's strawberry. Yeah, hopefully you can save it like without having to put a bunch of sugar in it. Bob Watkins, hello, how are you? What are you up to today? We're just brewing some tea, so we're on a tiny little bit of a break between writing sessions here. This tea, I think I showed you guys the tea, but not actually said what it's called. It's called Mahogany Maple. It's from a place called Dollar Tea, which my husband subscribed me to for Christmas for the year. It came with I believe they were my April samples, and it's super good. I really like it. It's very similar to, I have a maple oolong from David's Tea, which is, maple and black tea, and this is like maple and green tea. So it's a little bit lighter. It doesn't have quite as robust a base to it. But it's really nice and not too, like, it's sweet without being like sickly sweet, because maple syrup can be really sweet. Oh, I heard Mr. Pepper just got home. So yeah, I hope the second steep will be as good as the first one, because I stopped the first steep while the leaves were still partially wound. I inhale mahogany all the time. I don't know if there's any actual mahogany in the tea, but, I assume that that's the idea, like, behind it. Finished draft 3 of my outline, and Friday is poetry day. Nice! Big Swole Lee, hello. Welcome to the stream. Sorry there's no clicky clacks at the moment. I'm just brewing some tea before we continue. So if it's poetry day, does that mean that you write poetry or that you read poetry, or both? Either or both. I'm looking forward to the weekend. For sure. Both, but writing is the agenda today. Nice. So do you use prompts for your poetry, or is it just sort of like whatever comes to mind? I don't write poetry very often. I kind of dipped my toes back into it a little bit, but I'm not very good at it because I don't do it very often. So, today we're writing a prompt for my blog. I guess I should actually like shout out my blog again. So if you pop over to, oh, thank you so much, Big Swole Lee, for the follow. It should pop up the alert in a moment. Those seem to be taking a little while these days. Over on my blog, I do, alternate blogs and, freebies, like free little fictional scenes. I don't know why that was such an awkward description. Every other Monday. There it goes. Thank you so much for the follow. And what I did was calculate that I write about 22 free fictions every year. So I started the 22 Stories in 2022 project The idea is that I'm just using a list of prompts I found online to write different stories that take place in the multiverse where my stories take place. Story number 6, the prompt is a incomparable fear encompasses your character like a tsunami. So we're writing about a character, Robin, the daughter of one of the sort of more prominent characters in my series. And she is sort of making a big decision to leave behind the life she has known and get to know her father, who didn't know that she existed for the first decade of her life. And so we've just kind of reached the point where the fear is happening, and she's sort of frozen up. Her limbs have sort of locked in place while she's dealing with this, oh no, have I made a horrible mistake decision. We've written about 1,800 words so far in 2 sprints, which is pretty good. And once I get my tea, which will be in a minute here, I'll run the sprint timer again, and I'll see if I can get it finished. I might need 2 sprints to get it finished. I'm not quite sure how long it's going to be. Thank you. I'm glad it sounds interesting. Sometimes I worry. I usually do start the writing prompt streams with a little bit of a spiel on like why I decided to write a thing, and sometimes I worry it's just me blabbering for like 20 minutes. I try to, for at least with the writing prompts, I try to like pick a concept to explore. I usually do this once a week, but my other streams are more novel oriented. So on Monday, I'll be working on Beast Wicked Gleam again, which is book 4 in my Aruvalia Chronicles. We're working on an edit for that. And I'm going to add a new scene on Monday, the last new scene that I'll be adding, the last completely new scene that I'll be adding to this particular book. So I'm looking forward to that. There's slightly less spiel when I'm doing my novel stuff, but it's nice to take a break from like the really heavy thought process stuff and just kind of do something for fun, and that's what I try to do with my writing prompts. So, and it's a nice thing to do on a Friday afternoon because it requires a little bit of thought, obviously, but not like so much thought that I'm like, oh, I don't feel like doing anything. It's Friday. I have a scratch pad where I keep ideas on poetry days, and then on poetry days, choose one as a prompt. That's a great idea. I have something similar. I haven't used it in a while, but I have a bunch of just little one-line prompts that I always intended to turn into stories. Sometimes I do open up the notepad and pick one, but sometimes I'm just kind of like, none of them sing to me some days. Lots of content. Thank you. I've been running it for several years. Sometimes it's just like whatever's on my mind at the time. I try to keep up to date on my projects and stuff on there as well. So like once I finish the next round of edits on Beast Wicked Gleam, I'll probably do a blog post about, what happened while I was editing it with the story and with my life and that sort of thing. But I like to post things for fun there too, and give people sort of an idea of the stuff that I write in case they might be interested. The hosting is, what's it called? DreamHost, I believe. Yes. I don't know that I'm entirely happy with DreamHost as a host anymore. When I first started using them, I really liked them. And I felt like their customer service was really good and like that they were really responsive. They do shared hosting, which I guess means that like you're on a server with a certain number of other people. And I find that these days, their customer service only ever is like, they only ever tell me things like delete all of your unused plugins and stuff, and it's like, well, I've already done that, so that's not helpful to me. I'm starting to look into, what's it called, Bluehost, I think. Yes, I've started to look into Bluehost. They're a little bit more expensive, but I do I kind of feel like if you are just starting out with like a small website and you don't necessarily need a lot of heavy back end stuff, DreamHost is really good and really affordable. But I do think I'm gonna outgrow it at some point. So grain of salt. In terms of like setting things up and keeping your domain like registered and stuff, I think DreamHost is decent in that regard. But I'm not sure how long it'll make sense. Sorry, I'm just noticing that my hair is uneven. And I'm like, I don't know if I can fix it because it's settled into that part for the day. So yeah. I think my tea should be done. So let me pop AFK and I'll show you guys what the tea leaves look like now that they've unwound. It'll be quite a bit more. It's actually surprising. And then we'll do another sprint. Okay, so just quickly, so you can see the leaves have fully opened now. You can see that they don't really have the twist in them anymore. They're quite like drenched right now, so they look quite compressed compared to like once they start to dry. But that gives you some idea of just like how compressed they start. This is what they start to look like when they're fully open. And it looks like there's about 2 times as much tea in there as when I started. So just an idea of like if you have those teas, usually it's mostly oolongs, but if you have a tea that starts out like really compressed and sort of like twisted into a little ball, this I probably wouldn't be able to get much more flavor out of because it's fully open now and it doesn't have any more of that compression that indicates that it's like fully opened and fully given all of its flavor to the tea. But earlier when we looked at it, it was still partially twisted, right? Which indicates that it had more to give. And this is the color of the tea on a second steep. And it's very nice. It was a little bit more bitter because I let it go as long as I did. It was a little bit more bitter than the first steep, but I just added a tiny bit of extra honey to it. And it's fine. I'm just gonna run this back out to the kitchen because it's a little bit damp. And let's do a sprint. Are you with us, Roaming Witch? Are you ready for typees? You are interested in the next sprint, so I want to make sure you're here. Ready, perfect. Let's get 20 minutes on the clock and do some clicky clacks. It's good music for it too. Bard Owl. Oh, I'm sorry. Do you need a minute? I can give you 1 minute to restart, or you can just join when you are ready. Oh, my screen just turned off. Okay. I thought it wasn't going to turn back on. How are you, Bard? How was your day? Are you excited for the weekend? I assume you don't have to work over the weekend. You better not have to work over the weekend. So excited for the weekend, really looking forward to tomorrow. Nice. Neo, hello. How are you? How are you feeling today? Sleepy. Did you just wake up? Is it morning for you or is it evening for you? Aren't we like sort of opposite on the time spectrum? (1:40 a.m.) My goodness. Did you just wake up or are you staying up late? Although you are in so late it's early territory. Have a bad headache and can't sleep. I almost couldn't read those words. I'm sorry to hear that, Neo. Usually when I have a headache, I will try to either drink some tea or lay in the dark, which you may or may not already have tried. I hope that it eases off so you can get some rest. I hate headaches. Usually, like, if some other part of your body hurts, you can, like, turn on the TV and watch something. But, like, if your head hurts, then it's, like, it's so noticeable, right? Like, it's hard to take your mind off of something that is, like, encompassing your mind, if that makes sense. Talking to herself. I'm talking to you, Neo. I do talk to myself, though, so that's not abnormal. You have a daily migraine. Oh, no. I'm sorry to hear that. Do you have medication for it, or do you usually just have to wait for it to go away? I know migraines can be quite nasty. sorry. My chair isn't going where I want it to go. Ugh. I understand why you don't want to take painkillers, Neo. That makes sense. That does make sense. Transitioning from one description to the next is definitely one of my weaker points. I think I've stared at my last sentence for 2 solid minutes. Just remember, it doesn't have to be perfect on the first go-around. If you have an awkward transition in there, you can fill it in later. You can even leave a note for yourself that says, fix this later, and just do the best you can. Get those initial brush strokes down, and then... I know it's easier said than done. Easy to say, just let it be bad, versus, you know, actually doing it. But don't worry, if the description isn't bang on the first time around, at least you wrote something, right? At least you tried. My descriptions are always quite rocky on my first pass. That's one of the things that I tend to take a big look at during my first editing pass. My brain is like, no, it must be perfect. I know. I know exactly what you mean. And I have days where, like, I write something and then I delete it and rewrite it. Even though I try not to do that, sometimes I still do it. It's hard. But I feel like if you've been staring at it for 2 minutes trying to make it work, you've given it a good try. You're entitled to move on. Just don't forget to delete the not before publishing your book. The note. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Make sure that you go back and either take out the note or fill in the blank or whatever. Let's see. How much did I write during that one? I think I started here. 930. Pretty consistent today, which is nice. I did stop mid-sentence this time. That's okay. I definitely think one more sprint will do it because I'm very close to the end here. I don't think it'll take me another 900 words to wrap it up. I think I only need like 200 or 300, maybe 4. Sometimes 100 words goes not as far as you think, but I think we'll run one more full sprint timer because that should bring us close to the end. I'll take a brief break in between here, of course. I think we'll do one more full sprint timer and then we'll be able to wrap it up for the day. I'm actually really happy with how the scene has come out. I just need to stick the landing. It's like I've done the perfect gymnastics routine. Now I just have to stick the dismount and I'll be happy. I want to falter at the finish line. That was my tip of the day. Good tip. Remove your notes. Remove the notes you write yourself before you publish your book. It is useful. I remember one time in high school, one of my friends was asked by our band director to write like a little insert for so we would have our concerts, right, and they would have a program with information about like what pieces we were playing, and we were having a guest player come to play with our band, and one of my friends was asked to write a little insert for the program about the guest, and so she wrote it out, and there was a detail that she didn't know that she felt should be included. So she left a space for it. She put little brackets in. I'll do it on my screen right now. So she did this, right? She did something essentially like that, like this XXX. Just to leave a space in there, and then told our band director, like, oh, hey, I didn't know this thing, so I left a spot for it. And then, like, the day that we were practicing, we were, like, doing our dress rehearsal for the concert. She runs up to me, and she's like, oh, my God. And she shows me, she tells me this whole background, and she shows me that the programs were printed up with that little space still left in there because no one ever went back and filled it in. And she was like, I told him that I left it, that it was supposed to be changed. And of course, she was understandably upset because she was like, oh no, this happened, it's my fault. And it's like, but it's not, like, it's not your fault that it necessarily went to print that way. But that was how we learned, you know, that if we told our director that something needed changed, it just wasn't going to get changed. He was a good guy, very absent-minded. My brain likes to word vomit when I write, so I've been trying tiny little spurts of writing in an attempt to stem it. I'm the same. I 100%, I mean, most of what I've written today is word vomit. It's just word vomit that I actually happen to like. That's my whole method for my first drafts, is just puke words onto a page and fix it later. And if it works, I mean, hey. I actually really like, I didn't use a sprint timer actually prior to writing on stream. But I actually really like it. It actually has really helped me and keeps me focused. Probably partially for the same reason. It gives me breaks from the word vomit. Still learning how to word vomit? Someday it'll just happen for you, Roaming Witch. You'll just put your fingers on keyboards and words will just come out. You won't like all of the words. I don't know if you guys have ever noticed, but every now and then when I'm writing on stream, I actually just cringe. Because I'm unhappy with what I've written, but I just kind of keep going. Oh no. Sorry. A yawn. I definitely think it's, I think that not editing as you go is like a learned, I don't know if I would call it a learned skill, a learned habit maybe. I certainly had to sort of train my brain away from that. During Nano, I'd throw dream sequences in whenever I got stuck. Hey, yeah, I mean, you can always cut them later if you don't really like them. Like, that, my whole thing with a first draft is like, if I do something and I really hate it, no one else is really going to see it except me. So I can cut that part and throw it in the garbage or, you know, squirrel it away into some hidden place on my hard drive where no one else ever sees it. And I can replace it with something that I think works better. Sometimes you need to move forward to move back, right? Sometimes you need to know what's going to happen later in the story in order to know what happens at the part where you're stuck. So getting something in there and getting yourself moved on. And sometimes, like I've had this experience with the latest book that I'm editing, I left notes for myself in Beast Wicked Gleam where I said, this scene doesn't work, it needs to be fixed. And then I got to that scene to edit it, and I was like, what am I talking about? What was past me going on about? This is fine. This is great. It works perfectly. Why did I think I needed to change this? How did you write? What's your method? Ask the journalist. Megan's answer, I vomit on my pages. Yes. I mean, that is basically what I do. It's not a wrong answer. It's not inaccurate. The thing is, I tend to go too long and burn out my brain, so I need to teach my brain to slow down when writing so the burnout doesn't happen. That makes sense. Yeah, you need to go at a pace that you can, like, maintain, for sure. And for me, I've built sort of breaks into my schedule, right? So I take weekends off, for example, so that for the same reason, right? Otherwise, your brain just kicks into overdrive and you're always going. And even if you want to write more often, sometimes you need to have breaks. Like, I just took a week off last week. And there was a part of me that very much like wanted to be involved in my projects during that time, but I kept myself away from them, and I was just very brightly burning when I finally got back. Like the creative candle was lit. I actually did like a very rudimentary outline for my next project, my next big project. Books, what is it? Books 10, 11, and 12 for the Aravalia Chronicles. I actually got those sort of very rudimentary outlined. So if you take a break, or if you, like you said, if you train your brain to work in manageable chunks, it makes a big difference, because otherwise, yeah, you just end up with no energy and you can't do anything. I need to write again. I feel like I lost my imagination because I can't write right now. I mean, you have to take care of yourself first, Neo. If the well is empty, you can't draw from it. If you're exhausted, if you're not feeling well, if your body needs time to recover, those are all perfectly valid reasons to not write. And I know that you've been, I don't know how sick you've been, because I didn't necessarily ask, but I know that you've not been feeling the best. So it's important to tend to yourself, get to where you're feeling better. And when you have energy again, then you just work slowly back into it. You pick up the pen again, you let the words come. You might have to start slow again to build back up to like your previous pace, but there's absolutely nothing wrong with needing time. And I promise you that when you feel better, like when you're not ill and when you don't have a headache, imagination will come back. As long as you reach for it, it will always come back. You just need to give it time. I have my imagination, I just can't get it down in words except for D&D and GTA. I mean, those are great ways to start expressing your creativity. I mean, eventually, if you want to write things down, you'll hopefully, find a method of writing down that works for you. But those are absolutely like great places to start. Almost every day I wrote something. Today my page is empty. Honestly, Neo, I do know that feeling, because I have days where I'm so bottom of the barrel that I couldn't write a word if I tried. I don't stream those days, so you don't see them, but they do happen. And all I can say is forgive yourself for not having words today. It's okay if you don't have words today. I know it's scary, the idea that you won't be able to do it again, but you will. You absolutely will. It will happen. You just have to give it time. And not beat yourself up for not being able to do it. I ended up taking a whole year off writing from burnout, so now I'm working with a new method, and it's feeling good so far. Fingers crossed for you as well, Laurel Tabby. I really hope it works for you. I spent years developing my sort of process. Like, I have a draft cycle that I use, and I have a system for taking time off, and like structure for like my schedule. And it took me years to get to one that worked well for me. But it's all sort of, it's a trick of finding the right balance between work and breaks but also between projects, like, because I've found that, strangely enough, if I work on one project for too long, I burn out faster than if I switch between projects, which is why I do 2 days of big novel projects each week and 2 days of a side novel project. I call them side novels. They're still pretty big, but I switch off between projects because it keeps me fresh. It keeps my brain working in different directions, and it keeps me from grinding away at the same thing. And it's weird because generally people tell you not to do that, not to switch back and forth between projects. But if I spend one day on something and switch gears the next morning, essentially, it has actually worked really well for me. And I ain't gonna fix what ain't broken. So, but absolutely, like, play around with the time of day you write, the amount of time you write, like, all those kinds of things to find the thing that works best for you. I have an idea, but exactly like the first time I wrote, words don't come out. I mean, I would say if you've tried and it's just not happening, keep that idea, keep hold of it, let it churn a little bit more in your brain. Try again tomorrow. See if it happens tomorrow. Try again each day until it comes out. And if you find that it's really stuck, you can do another idea, and that might shake the first idea free. Words can be finicky little creatures sometimes. They don't always respond to us when we want them to. I think my tea needs a bit of a refresh. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop AFK just quickly here for one last bio break, reheat my tea. We'll come back, we'll do a sprint. I might do a shortened sprint because I think I only need the 10 minutes to get this finished. We'll see. And then we should be able to wrap up for the day. So I will be back in 2 minutes. I'm back. I'm formulating a second project to switch to so I don't burn out on this current one. Good luck. Like I said, I find that switching gears between the two just keeps me... And I tend to do a lot more planning for my primary projects and sort of minimal planning for my secondary projects, because I also find that switching between heavily plotting and sort of lightly pantsing also, like, it's refreshing, right? I'm not doing the exact same thing every day. I mean, theoretically, I'm kind of doing the same or using the same muscles every day, but I'm doing it different ways. It's almost like instead of doing aerobics every day, sometimes I, do yoga instead. Sort of idea. So it really, really helps me. I hope it helps you. I have like at least 12 craft and writing and other projects going on at home. The only way I can do everything is to go back and forth. Sometimes I wonder if a really short attention span. I mean, if you find that you're getting things done in a way that's satisfying to you, I would say that's fine. That's perfectly fine. If you think you're spread too thin, then I would say pick like 2 or 3 projects to prioritize until you get those done, and so on and so forth. But if it works for you, then that's what matters, right? Lightly pantsing, yeah. I will say too, even on my really heavily plotted things, I still somewhat pants, because if my outline says do this and my brain says something else is gonna happen, I go with the something else, right? And I just kind of let it happen, and I don't get too locked in. But some projects I don't even plan that much. I just kind of say maybe this will happen, and then by the time I get to that part in my outline, I've gone so far off track that I haven't, like, I'm just out in the middle of nowhere and I just kind of run with it. All right, I think I'm going to do a foreshortened sprint because Mr. Pepper has some things going on later tonight. And I think if we do a full 20-minute sprint, I might run a bit over. But also, I think I only need 10 minutes to do this. So in order to keep my brain focused, I'm going to go for the 10-minute timer instead of the 21. But of course, if you are sprinting, feel free to keep going when I stop. I happen to have this nice handy dandy 10-minute break timer. Also thinking of trying different POVs for each project as well to help my brain differentiate between them. Interesting. Yeah, that would certainly help. I tend to usually write in third person limited most of the time just because it's my favorite, but I've definitely done some first person stuff. just heard Ghost come back upstairs from downstairs and go back downstairs, so now I'm worried that something has occurred. Although maybe he just needed his toolbox. He's checking on something for our tenant, and I'm just worried. I'm gonna stop there. I'll let the timer run down, but I'm very happy with that. I feel like I stuck the landing, you guys. started there because I started mid-sentence. 412 more words. Heck yeah, 3,225 total. I'm happy with that. It was longer than I expected. The rabbit hole was deep, but I'm very pleased with having poked my head in it. Breakfast for dinner! That's one of my favorite dinners! Roaming Witch, yes! Enjoy that. Enjoy that food. I love having breakfast for dinner. I love having breakfast for breakfast, but I love even more having breakfast for dinner. I'm gonna let that sprint timer finish. Meanwhile, I'm just gonna see who's on. Coffee Quills, of course. The lovely Coffee Quills is streaming. We could drop in on coffee. HK Darkwood is streaming. We could drop in on her. Let's see how long people have been going. Oh, HK Darkwood has been going for a while. So she might be wrapping up soon. She might be wrapping up soon. Looks like she's wrapping up right now, as a matter of fact. Sag. We could drop in on coffee, for sure, for sure. Raven Wrights is around. We could drop in on him. Pancakes and bacon and my famous cheeseless cheesy scrambled eggs. Roaming Witch, you have to share this recipe with me. I'm lactose intolerant. That sounds amazing. It is not, in fact, time for words. It is time not for words because we finished the words. I'm at 945 words in the second chapter of my work in progress from the 777 when I had this morning, so I'll call it a win. Yes! Every word is a win. It doesn't matter how many. You wrote more words than you had previously written. That is cause for celebration. Always, always, always. Never despair having written words because it is always good. Chat, do we have a preference of where we want to go hang out? We can definitely go drop in on Coffee Quills if we would like to do that. Always fun to hang out with Coffee. Raven Wrights is also around. He's a bit more talkative. I should say more so that he doesn't necessarily run sprints. Coffee does do sprints, so we could head over there. Or if someone would like to suggest somewhere we should hop, someone that I am not necessarily aware of who's online, let me know. I can certainly give it a try. I will say I'm very tempted to drop in on Coffee just because I don't get to raid Coffee Quills very often. Our schedules do not often collide. And I don't actually often stream on Fridays. I usually stream Monday, Wednesday, Thursday. I did Tuesday, Thursday, Friday this week. Speaking of, I will be back bright and early 10 a.m. Monday morning with another raiding stream. We'll be adding, I mentioned this earlier, but we'll be adding a new scene to Beast Wicked Gleam, the project that I'm working on my main days, on my main novel days. It's the last fully new, mostly new. It's going to be from a small chunk of text that's already in there, but be the last mostly new scene that I'm adding to book 4. Everyone went to sleep, so I'm going to be drinking by myself again. No pie! How was karaoke? What did you sing? Please tell. So yeah, I'll be back Monday morning. I'll be back to my more normal schedule. So Monday and Wednesday, I'll be doing novel edits for Beast's Wicked Gleam. Next Thursday, we're going to have story number 7 of the 22 stories in 2022. Oh, Snoz, why don't you drink with pie? That way you guys won't be drinking alone. I'm gonna be joining you guys in drinking after dinner, but I gotta feed the ghost pepper first. Next week's prompt will be, you know what they say about family. So I'm gonna have to get my brain working on that one to decide what they say about family, apparently. I have no idea what I'm writing for that prompt, unlike what I decided to write for this prompt. So that'll be interesting. We were singing many songs? Well, that's good, Pie. That's what you do at karaoke, really. Let's see. I think Coffee is about to finish a sprint, actually. So let's go drop in and say hi. Because we can. Still got a martini? I would love to have a martini. I wish you could USB that to me. I'd share my tea with you if I could. Jaeger is gone. It sounds like you've had a very nice night, Pie. Which I am glad. Because that's what you should do on a Friday. Thanks again to everyone for coming and hanging out, for sharing my sprints. Let's go drop in and say hi to Coffee. Thank you, Bob Watkins, for hanging out. Only 3 glasses of martini and 6 glasses of Jaeger plus pomegranate juice. Only. You ain't even tipsy yet. My goodness. You must have quite the constitution, Pie. Let's see. We've got a raid call. We've got a sub-raid call for those of you who've got the emotes. Also, feel free to throw in any combo of emotes that you would like to, because that's what Twitch is all about. Let's see. Did my right tip copy over today? Right type. Right tip. Writing prompts and practice scenes is a good way to connect with new characters and find their voices. For me, it always takes a while to connect with new characters, so that's one of the reasons I started doing these writing prompts. I definitely feel like I got a little bit more insight into Robin, writing from her perspective today. It's always cool to see my characters from another character's perspective as well. That is helpful to me for the future as well. Have a great evening and a great weekend, whatever your time zone is. Have a great Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I'll be back on Monday. I love you all. You're all amazing. Thank you for sharing this time with me. Take care.
Starborn Striker, thank you very much for